Hi besties, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, hi, my name is Charlie, I'm a writer, and today I'm going to be talking to you about everything that I learned and what I wish I knew before writing my first book. Now, if you're new here, I do want to preface this by saying that I've just written the first draft. I haven't actually revised it yet, but writing a first draft is still a really huge accomplishment, and I feel like even though I haven't actually finished the book, it deserves celebrating, and the process deserves to be reflected on. Also, don't mind me. If you see me looking down, it's because I have notes. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. There's a lot to be said. And so grab a drink, get comfy, buckle up, and stick around because maybe this will inspire you to finish writing your book too. Kind of going back to what I said about how the process of writing a book just takes a really long time. I think that one of the things that I just didn't realize, or I underestimated, I guess, was the amount of time that it was actually going to take me to finish a first draft. If we back it all the way up to when I first started writing, obviously it's taken an exceedingly long time, probably longer than it should have taken. And I do know that if I had put my head down and just focused on it, that I probably would have finished a first draft a lot sooner. But this is the state of things. This is where I'm at. And it's okay that it took me 26 whole years to finish a first draft. I know that that sounds crazy, but I started writing when I was 8. There was no way that I would have been able to comprehend or wrap my mind around the length of time that it would have taken me with the information that I had been given. Because the information that I was working with was really that I'm capable of writing up to 2,000 words in a day. I could probably finish a first draft in 2 or 3 months. In reality, it took me a little bit over a year. I wasn't considering the fact that people burn out and people need breaks. Sometimes I think of myself a little bit as a superhuman, which seems a little strange considering the fact that I literally cannot get my life together to save my life, but that's a totally different subject. The point is that I drastically underestimated the amount of time that I would need to finish a first draft while simultaneously overestimating my ability to sit down and focus and just get it done. The thing is that I didn't actually work on it every single day. And I'm not saying that you should write every single day, but it definitely would have helped me shorten the time frame if I had allowed myself to come back to it after I took a break. And in my defense, a lot of stuff happened in 2024 that sort of made it more difficult for me to actually sit down and write. It was more that I was not mentally able to handle the idea of exerting additional energy for a creative pursuit. And I think that that's okay. I am learning through this process that I am not a superhuman, that I do set completely unrealistic expectations and goals for myself, and that I shouldn't be hard on myself when life happens or when I need a break. Throughout the process, anytime I missed a day of writing, anytime that I just didn't feel like it, or when it was really, really difficult for me to actually sit down and get the work done and I just decided not to, I beat myself up for that. There were obviously some days where I didn't beat myself up, just depending on what was going on, but it was those days when I needed that mental and emotional and creative recovery and something wasn't happening and I decided not to write, that made me feel the worst. I tend to write more when I'm feeling inspired and when I'm feeling really motivated. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But whenever I would write that way and I would come up on some sort of creative block, I would almost always say, okay, well, maybe this isn't the project for me then. This time around, I told myself at the very beginning that I was going to push through those mental blocks and just go ahead and write anyway. What I wish that I had done, instead of just telling myself in the moment to push through, is just maybe left myself a note or given myself a pass to skip that scene and to move forward into a different scene that I was more excited about writing at the time. I think that that's probably something that I'm going to take along with me as I write the first draft of Project Reaper and all of the drafts that are coming after this first draft for Project Daydream. I felt like I needed to write this book chronologically in order because I was pantsing the novel. I don't think that I would do that again. I do think that the prose are going to be a lot messier because I didn't give myself the grace to just say, okay, I'm not writing this this scene today, I'm going to skip ahead to the scene that I know is going to be in here somewhere, and I'll come back to this later when I'm more ready and inspired to. I wish that I had known the amount of grace that I was going to have to give myself, and I wish that I had known how to give that to myself. I think that as I have like gone through the process, I've learned how to set more realistic expectations. I have definitely relaxed in that way, and I think that that's something that I'm going to take away from this experience and apply to other areas of my life as well, because we all deserve grace. Like, we're human beings, life happens, and sometimes even when you're motivated, the words just aren't there, and it's okay because you're human and because you're not a machine. I wish that I had been more clear about how much I was realistically able to accomplish, because I'm not going to lie to you guys, part of the reason why I took that long break was because I was burnt out. So another thing that I really didn't expect, well, I guess I might have expected it, but I guess I just underestimated how much determination was going to be required for me to push through to the end. I don't think anybody ever really knows how much determination and effort and just like consistency it takes to write a book until they actually do it. What I mean by consistency isn't necessarily writing every single day, but consistently going back to your project after you've taken a break or when you feel like you don't want to write. I think I didn't realize how many days I would say I didn't want to. It was almost every single day. I told myself, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to sit down and write today. I don't feel like it. This is hard. I didn't realize how many times that thought would roll through my head. And I don't think that that's something that is ever going to go away. And obviously this problem can be amplified by other factors that are happening in your life. Unfortunately for me, I do deal with a lot of like mental health stuff. So I had to really push through a lot of that in order to sit down at the computer and just type out a couple of words. I think like my lowest writing day was, I think, like 5 words. And I remember that day very vividly. I sat down at the computer and I was like, I really hate the idea of doing this today. I don't want to do anything except for lay on my couch and rot. Even though I only wrote 5 words, I still count that as overcoming that resistance that we sometimes feel when we're about to do something hard. Usually, you know, when you sit down and you don't want to do it, you sit down and after the first few words, you feel good about continuing. On this particular day, I was not having it and I decided to turn it off and I rotted on my couch that day. And I think that, like, going back to what I said about giving yourself grace, it's so important to let yourself do that occasionally, but having the determination to pull yourself out of that slump and getting back to your project on a regular basis, even when you don't want to, that is something that I learned is not only very hard to do, but something I am very capable of doing because I did it. But I'm glad to know and to learn that I do have that determination and the ability to consistently pull myself back to the project when I'm not feeling like it, just out of sheer willpower and stubbornness and unwillingness to give up. I guess the other thing that I didn't realize before I started writing this book was just how little the people around me who are not writers would understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. A lot of this is because I think it's the type of people that I have in my life. I don't really know very many writers in person. I have one writing friend. I have family that likes to draw and creative people in my family, don't get me wrong, but a lot of my family are like STEM oriented. I'm kind of like the black sheep in that way, where like pretty much everything that I'm interested in has to do with something creative. And I don't think that they really understand like truly how long it takes to write a book. When I would have like family and other friends text me and say, hey, how's the book coming along? Are you finished with it yet? When can I read it? And I was literally maybe a quarter of the way through the book and had just started. Some people really just don't understand how long it actually takes. It's not like writing a paper for college. It's a huge undertaking. I am a boundary setter, especially when it comes to my time and where I place my energy. And I think that a lot of the people in my life don't really understand that when I say, oh no, I'm busy, and then when they ask me what I'm going to be doing, I say I'm writing, they don't really get why I can't just like push that to the side, why I have a boundary in place around my writing time, telling people not to disturb me during X hour and X hour and saying that I'm not available. I don't think a lot of people really understand why I can't be more flexible about that. The reason is because I set a set time so that I know I have that time dedicated to my project. And I know for a fact if I were to say, oh yeah, no problem, I'll push it to later tonight, and I went out with a friend at whatever time that my writing time was scheduled, that when it came time to actually sit down to write later that day, I would not do it. I really had to set boundaries around that time when I wanted to write. And I don't think a lot of people who wanted to see me during those hours understood why I was saying no. You know, trying to explain it to them was a little difficult because they're just like, well, you can write anytime. Why can't you just like come to breakfast with me? Yeah, that's just like a whole thing. I think that people who don't write will just never really understand that aspect of it. Being on AuthorTube and being a writer kind of simultaneously affected the way that I talk about writing, but also it showed me how little I know about talking about writing. This is kind of such a weird topic to talk about and to try to explain, but I sometimes find it easier to talk about writing with people who aren't writers. I don't know if that's just like because of my own insecurity and coming across as like silly or like maybe a little dumb. The writers on AuthorTube like really know very well how to concisely convey what they mean when they're talking about their projects. And that is something that I found really challenging, and I still find it really challenging. I have a very casual way of speaking, in my opinion, and sometimes I can be all over the place. My thoughts are all unorganized, and so it makes it more difficult to talk about and to like find the words that I'm looking for. I guess I just really noticed that when I started this AuthorTube channel and publicly speaking about my writing projects. I didn't really know how to talk about it in a way that felt true to me. To be honest with you, I'm still sort of finding my footing there. I think that I'm getting a little bit better, especially recently, but I am still really struggling on occasion to kind of be concise with the way I speak about writing. Finding that balance in that medium and like figuring out how to talk about it in a way that you guys will understand and that doesn't sound all over the place has been a little bit of a challenge for me. The reason why I'm including that in the video is because obviously I wrote this book from start to finish and publicly shared that journey with you guys on AuthorTube. It's just another writing related thing that I learned while writing this book. Speaking of YouTube, let's talk about writing community for a second and how much of an unexpected impact that had on me in this process. As I mentioned, I don't have a lot of writer friends. I have one writing friend in real life. The other people that I talk to about writing are here on AuthorTube and other AuthorTubers. But when I first started writing Project Daydream, I didn't really have a big community. Like I had maybe 300 subscribers and some of my subscribers would engage and leave comments, but it was hit and miss. Like I didn't really have a ton of support. I had more support than I did before, but it wasn't like a lot. And I definitely didn't have anybody on Instagram like popping in my DMs or anything. And now I do. And I guess I just didn't realize how much I was going to need that and how big of an impact and a push that would give me to actually finish my draft. You guys were my rock 100%. You and other AuthorTubers literally helped me cross the finish line. If I didn't have you guys, if I didn't have those other AuthorTubers to talk to, go back and forth with in the comments, I would not have finished this draft. Anyways, what really helped me was that I felt a lot less alone with having you guys, you know, in my comments, liking my posts, everything like that. It has been truly such a blessing to see this little community grow, and I couldn't be more grateful that you guys are just like here supporting me and that we can talk in the comments and I can get to know you guys. I really couldn't have done it without you. So for that, I thank you. I think what probably helped the most was the fact that there are other writers now in the community that I could bounce ideas off of and to talk to about my project and to help me work through problems. Because there is another thing that I learned while writing this book and something that I wish I knew. And that is that writing a book is really freaking hard. And I'm not talking about like just sitting down at the computer to write. I'm talking about the actual craft of writing. It is a lot more difficult than you could even expect coming into it. You think that because you can write a really good sentence or paragraph or short story, that writing a book will be a piece of cake. But in reality, that is not at all how it works. And it's really hard, especially I think as a pantser, to keep the facts straight and to make sure that everything is making sense in your manuscript and it's not all over the place and that the voice is consistent and all of these other things. I could literally go on. Writing a book is really, really hard. It is complicated. It is confusing. It is stressful. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just about being able to write a good sentence and to make a sentence sound pretty. It takes a lot more work. And I knew that, but I think I really underestimated how much more work it was going to take. I think that if I would have plotted the book, that I probably wouldn't have had as many problems as I did have, but it's still going to be hard even with a plot. And that's one of the reasons why I think that my writing process is going to change a little bit moving forward, just because I don't want to go through that again. I really don't. I want to know what's going on in my story and not be confused and wondering halfway through if any of it is making any sense. It'll be a lot easier, I think, to determine whether or not I've gone off the rails, and I won't be seeing myself get stuck as much trying to determine what's coming up next in the scene, because I'll already have that kind of mapped out for myself and everything. I guess I just didn't really comprehend the level of difficulty that it was going to be. It really had me doubting my ability as a writer. I guess I just didn't expect to feel that imposter syndrome so strongly throughout the entire process. I think every day I was telling myself, who am I to write a book? Like, what makes me think I could do this? That happened more so after the first act of the book. I was telling myself on a regular basis, you're dumb for doing this. Like, you're dumb. Why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through this? Like, this sucks. Your words, they suck. You're not a good writer. It had me doubting myself at literally every corner. And the truth of the matter is that even if you take your time with your first draft, it's probably going to have problems, but especially when you don't plot and you don't take your time with your prose and you just whip it out as quickly as possible without caring whether or not it's clean. In a way, I kind of did it to myself, I think, but also I think that's just something that every writer goes through. It's just like one of those things, right? We hear people talking about imposter syndrome all the time on AuthorTube and even in the spaces outside of AuthorTube. I know people personally who have struggled with imposter syndrome in other areas, even when they're not a writer. I think every single person goes through that at some point in their life. I think the ability to ignore that voice is something that I didn't realize that I possessed. When your brain tells you that you can't do something, the only reaction you should have is to ignore it, because everybody has those thoughts of doubt and self-doubt and that feeling like you're not good enough and that nothing you ever do will measure up to where you would like to be. The people who succeed and the people who actually finish are the ones who ignore that voice and do it anyway and consistently try to improve. You're never going to get there if you listen to that voice. I may not have the best words now, but if I keep working on it, I will have better words later. And that goes for every single one of you watching this right now. So don't let that imposter syndrome voice prevent you from pursuing what you want to pursue, whether it be writing or drawing or whatever it is. You can do it if you set your mind to it. It might not be good the first time, but the longer you do it, the more you try, the better it will be. And so you should just keep going. I think that's something that helps with getting better at writing is obviously going to be reading. It's such an important thing to do, especially when you're writing a book. And I know some people, when they're writing, they don't read books, and that's something else entirely. But what I mean is, in order to be a good writer, you have to read a lot. Obviously, everybody knows the reasons for that. You pick up what you like, you pick up what you don't like, you pick up how to write a good sentence. And even if you're not consciously trying to pick apart the plot, you can still see those beats and they subconsciously like sit in your head. The other thing that reading really helps with is having a consistent voice. voice. When I started writing Project Daydream, I wasn't reading enough. And that is something that I regret because the voice in Project Daydream is all over the place. I don't even know what the voice is supposed to be in Project Daydream now at this point. It's just inconsistent. Characters sound different chapter by chapter. The descriptions aren't written in the same tone. But I do think that if I were reading more often, I would have probably been a little bit more consistent with that. By reading, I mean like reading in voices similar to what I'm trying to convey in Project Daydream. I didn't do that, and it's something that I do regret. I think that reading is actually going to become an integral part of my writing process, which has turned out to be a lot more fluid than I thought it was when I first started writing this book. I see myself as a pantser through and through. I think if you're not new here, you've probably heard me say that a few times. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think I'm as much of a pantser as I thought I was. I found myself doing a lot of brainstorming, like developing scenes and everything as I was writing this book. I would make a couple of bullet points saying, I want this, this, and this in this scene. And that's sort of like almost outlining as I go. I think that it's okay to let yourself experiment with your writing process. And I actually think that it's really important to let yourself experiment because it'll help you find the way that works for you, which will only help you improve your writing craft. And I think what I wish I knew before I started writing this book was that I shouldn't be so married to the idea of being a pantser. I think it would have been a more seamless process had I been able to do that from the beginning instead of waiting until like halfway through the draft to try outlining a scene. Let's backtrack a second and talk about writing community and how that has affected me, but just coming from a different point of view. The other thing that I really think that helped me along the way in correlation to the writing community was the fact that I've been documenting the process of writing this book since the beginning of the draft. And I really think that documenting in some way, shape, or form, whether it be videos for yourself, vlogs here on YouTube, a blog, or whatever, even just journaling it and not sharing it with anybody, is so important to do because you can look back on that 10 years from now and see how far you've come. But also, it's just a way of memorializing all of the things that you were thinking and feeling and going through while you were writing this book and how much you've grown as a writer and as a person. I don't know. I just think that journaling and keeping record and documenting things is really important, even if you're not sharing on YouTube or to the general public. It's so important to just do that for yourself so that you can look back and see how far you've come. I can look back on my YouTube channel now and see that I really wanted to get out of the unfinished manuscript club back in January of 2024, and then fast forward a year and a half and see that I finally accomplished that goal. And how cool is that? I think that it also is helpful to document your process so that you can look back and see that you're capable of doing hard things. And that's the last thing that I learned throughout this process of writing my very first draft, is that I am capable of writing a book. I am capable of doing hard things. Now I have proof that I can. Now I have hard, concrete proof that I can write a book. And how cool is that to say? I now know that I can push through all of the difficult moments and I can come back to my draft after I've gone through a difficult moment in life, and I can push through those negative feelings that say, you can't do this, you're not good enough. I now know that I can. I can do all of those things. I now know that even if my book is bad, even if it's gonna have to be rewritten a million times, even if it never sees the light of day, even if I publish it and everybody hates it, even if I decide to later burn it in a trash fire, I know that I can write a book. I know that I am capable. I'm saying this to say that you are capable. You are also very capable of writing a book. You are capable of pushing through difficult moments in your life and coming back to your draft. You are capable of pushing through those feelings of doubt and people's negativity in your ear telling you that you can't do it, and your own brain telling you that you can't do it. You are capable of pushing through those feelings and getting to the end. Writing a book is a daunting task. I know. It is hard. It is hard. It takes people years sometimes to finally finish a first draft. It took me 26 years. So believe me, I am aware that it is difficult, but if I can do it after 26 years and all of the things that have happened to me in the last year and a half and several thousand manuscripts that have gone unfinished and my brain telling me that I'm not capable and people telling me that I'm not capable and that I'm not good enough, then so can you. You can do it too. I believe in you 1000%. And now that I have the confidence that I am able to actually finish a draft, I know that I can tackle revisions because I've already made it through one of the hardest parts of the process, and that's finishing the first draft. Just finishing the first draft, one tiny minuscule step at a time. That's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for being here. If you liked today's video, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. As always, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
When did we grow up? When did you